Hi there, and welcome back to another PSDK and Pokemon Studio tutorial video. In this video, we're going to be going through the new tutorial maps that are given to us in Studio 2 that show off how to do so many things in Pokemon Studio and PSDK, and I'm pretty excited to show off this floor specifically. The floor that we're going on today is going to be showing you how to give Pokemon and how to, like secretly give them, how to automatically add them into the PC, how to do a starter situation. So with this floor, you're going to get a few ideas or a few examples of how you could do some things. So we're going to interact with all the events on this floor, and then we're going to open it in RPG Maker, and then we're going to dissect it a little bit so that you can understand how to actually do these things. So the first thing you need to do is go on the elevator on the right side in the battle tower, or whatever it's called, and go to the first floor, which is going to be, go to the second floor, which is going to be the laboratory. And once you go out of this elevator, you're going to see a ton of familiar faces. The first one being Professor Birch. And as you can see from this event, it shows you how you're going to give the Pokedex to the user. Now, we've previously gone over that in a video, but if you forgot or if you needed another example or something, you could always just go to this floor and see how Birch just did it. So let's go over here and let's go talk to this guy. I found this funny Pokemon in the Rocky Cavern. I'm more into programming rather than battling, so I'm just going to give it to you. So as you can see, this is an example of how to give the Pokemon directly to the PC. All you have to do is use a very simple command in the script, command, which I'll show you later. Over here we have Elm, who's going to show you how you're going to give an egg to the player. So as you can see, the command is right there, but again, we're going to dissect all of these events in just a few moments. Over here, this guy is going to give us a Caterpie. Now this one gets added to our party, and it's not silent. This one just gets added to our party. As he mentioned, it doesn't ask if you want to rename, but there is someone that you can talk to if you do want to rename a Pokemon, which is going to show you how to use the name Raider. If you click on a Pokemon, it's going to allow you to change his nickname, but we're just going to stick with the same one, which, if you can tell, it says it looks no different from before, which means that there's a check to know if you actually changed the name or not. And as you see, when we try to do it with that egg that we were given, there's also a check to see if it's an egg. Now, we don't have a Rotom, so unfortunately we can't do anything over here. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give myself one for testing purposes. I silently just gave myself a Rotom. He's level 5. This should allow us to do some features over here. As you can see, from interacting with this guy, there's a check for a specific Pokemon in your party. As you can see, he says here, I see you have one with you. So we're going to make sure that we check that as well. Now, whenever we interact with one of these, it's going to change the form of our Rotom. And then afterwards, you're going to see that Rotom has changed forms. As you can see, you can also learn new moves when you change forms. And then if you click on Recall, it's going to allow him to go back to normal. I think we showed off enough with these. I'm not going to show off every single one. Now, if we talk to this guy, he's going to give us a very specific Pokemon. It's going to show you how you can customize the Pokemon before you can give it to the user. As you noticed, he mentioned something about Flamethrower and how it says red is fire. If we go, well, we don't have any room for it, so we're going to actually have to go over here. We're gonna have to interact with this PC storage, and if we go in the summary, we're gonna see that he is indeed shiny, and he does know Flamethrower. It's actually a really good Pokemon. If we go over here and we talk to Professor Oak, he's gonna say, sorry, I'm used to introducing myself this way to new trainers. Would you like me to show my introduction from the beginning? So it's going to show you how to do that typical professor intro. If you want to modify it, you can. This is the example right here. And if you say yes, then it's going to show that scene. That was done very well, I feel like. Now we're going to go over here. We're going to pick Ethan because I love Ethan. And here it shows you how you are going to define the gender of the player. And also tells you how you can rename the player and allow users to rename themselves. It also encourages you to initialize some other cool features like the day and night system, the tone system, and some other stuff that I'll probably end up making a separate video for in the future. Over here, we have someone who allows you to pick from your party and then can mimic their cry, which is pretty cool. We'll show you how to do that, of course. You know, shiny Pokemon have an unusual coloration. Have you ever caught one? I have, but I don't have one to show off. So let me go and grab the one that we were given. We'll just get rid of the Rotom and then go and interact with this guy again. And then we're going to show him a non-shiny first. Notice how he mentioned what the Pokemon was. Your Heliolisk is breathtaking. Look. Would you give it to me? No? Too bad. How sad. Over here, he's going to tell you how you can see the hidden power of a Pokemon. So let's just go see what our Heliolisk's hidden power is. It seems to be water. And this one, it shows you how you can check if you have any specific Pokemon in your storage. Unfortunately, we don't. And now for the final person to interact with, this is a pretty cool feature. So when we talk to Professor Rowan, he's going to tell you about the 3 Pokeballs that are on display. If you go and you interact with the Pokeballs, this scene should look very familiar. So now when you press A or D, it's going to swap between them, and it looks very fluid. A very, very cool animation. And if you click on it, it's going to zoom in and show you what the Pokemon is inside. Now, I'm a big sucker for Larvitar, and I always have been, so this is definitely the one I'm going for. And just like that, we've just went through tons of examples of things that you could do with your Pokemon, or just checking Pokemon, giving a Pokemon, or, you know, mimicking a cry. There's a lot of different things that you could do. All were given to us on this one floor. So I'm going to save my project now. I'm going to close this, and now we're going to take a good look at all of these events. So one of the first events we're going to check out is going to be the guy who interacted with us first. Now, I forgot to show this one off, but to be fair, I don't have that many Pokemon caught, but he does have a Dex-evaluation system, which has a check for a conditional branch, a check for a variable in a conditional branch, which is going to show you how many Pokemon you've seen. So if you check variable 2, it's the amount of Pokemon that you've seen, while the variable 3 is the amount that you've caught. There's another way that you can check this, and that would be by using a script command. You can just use this. Pokedex.pokemon_scene is a very similar way to check it. Probably an easier way. Another person we're going to check out is going to be the first person we interacted with after the professor, which is going to be Bill. Now, Bill showed us how we're going to give a Pokemon directly into the storage system. So if you see here, You say Pokemon equals store Pokemon, and then you use the DB symbol and the level of the Pokemon. As you can tell, this is not a very customized Pokemon here. If you've forgotten how you can get the DB symbol, it's actually really easy. All you have to do is open Studio, go to the Pokemon that you want. So let's say Clink, for example, or maybe Clink Clang, and then copy the identifier over here. And then when we go back over here, we could actually modify it. Now, typically when it looks this tight, like the box looks this small, it's actually in your best interest to go over here and run extend text, which then opens the box a lot bigger, or makes the box a lot bigger. We're then gonna highlight this area, and we're gonna paste the ID that we just copied from Studio. And that's how you would use a DB symbol for a Pokemon. Press OK if you want your changes to be applied. And now let's go check out Elm. If you remember, Elm gave us an egg, and that egg is actually a specific Pokemon. You can see here that when you are giving an egg, you do Pokemon equals add egg, and then you do parentheses, but then in the parentheses you need to do a bracket because now we have to fill in some object data. The first thing that we're going to fill in is what the ID is of the Pokemon, which I just showed you how you would get that ID or the DB symbol. The second thing could be the level, and the third thing could be the ability. This also shows you how you can modify what is known as user data, which allows you to basically make a new flag or, some type of new variable that's stored specifically in this user's save, and we're storing if the Pokemon is still in there, which will allow us to later check on the second page if the Pokemon is still an egg. So by using in a conditional branch, user data, elm egg, and then we do an and.egg question mark, we're able to check to see if the user data that's stored as elm egg is actually still an egg. Over here with the bug catcher, we have someone who gave us a Pokemon and doesn't allow you to rename it. It's done with a simple event command known as add_Pokemon, and then in the parentheses you have the DB symbol and the level. It's not a very specific Pokemon, but it does allow you to say which Pokemon you want and the level. Now over here was the name raider. If you see here, there's a script command that says call party menu. When you call this, it opens the user's party. It allows them to select the Pokemon from their party. That value does get stored in a variable. That variable is known as variable 43, which blatantly says this is the call party menu Pokemon index. So this is going to return a number between 0 and 5, or if you somehow have made changes to your game to where you have more than 6 Pokemon available in a party, it would then go up to that number. We then check if that Pokemon in that index, because if we do money sign actors and then in a bracket we have a number which is typically the index. So actors is actually another way of saying your party, and then this right here is typically the index value of the Pokemon that you're trying to check in the party. Now, since we just called call party menu and we just stored the number of the Pokemon that we just selected in variable 43, we're going to use variable 43 when we check to see if that Pokemon is an egg. This is basically just saying, hey, did the Pokemon we just check, is that Pokemon an egg? And if it's true, it's going to display a different message, and then it's going to jump to the end of the event. If it's not true, then this message never gets shown, and instead, we have some dynamic text here that's going to update based on what the name of the Pokemon is. So if you see here, we have text set variable, and then in that variable is going to be called poke, but we're storing the actor that's in the index that was selected, and its given name is going to be stored in poke. Then we can use that given name in the next line right here, like so. Now, if you want to be able to rename a Pokemon, it's quite easy. You just do rename_Pokemon and then the index value. Now, if you want to let the user select it, then that's when we do the whole call party menu. However, you don't have to use the game variable 43. You could specify a specific value, like if you want to rename the Pokemon, the first Pokemon in your party, or the second one, the third one, the fourth one, or the fifth one, or even the sixth one. And then since we did this earlier, we know what that Pokemon name is stored here. So we're checking it again to see if the Pokemon name matches the actor's given name. Over here is the Rotom guy. He had a system in place that allowed him to check and see if we had a specific Pokemon in our party. If you wanted to know how to do that, you could just check right here. And you'll see it says actors, which I'll remind you again is just calling for your party and saying if there are any actors, and then we're going to call them Pokemon. So if Pokemon have a DB symbol of Rotom, then this will come out as true. Otherwise, it will be false. So if you do have whatever this DB symbol is asking for, then it will show this first message here. Then it looks like there's another check here, which again is checking to see if the form of Rotom is not his normal form. So I guess if you had, you know, the fan or the lawnmower or the dishwasher, is that one of them? I don't remember. Then it would tell you here that you already have a special form. So again, if you wanted to check a form of a specific Pokemon in the party, that's what this is doing right here. Actors is checking in the party if anyone is in your party and follows these conditions, is a Rotom and is not in their default form. Then over here in the Rotom situation, you're doing a similar check to see if you have that Rotom. And then it looks like it's calling that party menu and asking the user to select the Rotom. It's then checking to make sure that you did properly select the Rotom. And then it's doing some changes here with the text and stuff again. Here it's checking to see if you are in your default form with some other choices. And then this one is checking a very specific form, which is probably related to the fan. Over here, you're given an example on how to forget a skill or delete a skill from a Pokemon. Now this is meant for when you're switching between your forms. This will force delete a specific move from the Pokemon's learn set. It will also delete it from their previously learnt moves so that if you are a different form, you can no longer have that move from a move relearner. It's not going to be in your move history anymore. I forgot to mention this, I think, but this also is how you would check a very specific form. So this is, again, in the party, based on the index you gave, if that Pokemon is in form 4. But if you wanted to check multiple forms at once, they give you an example for that as well. Here it's checking for forms 1, 2, 3, and 5. And it's basically saying if any of these are included in the Pokemon that we had picked. So if its form is equal to any of these, 1, 2, 3, or 5, then it would do something or do something else. Here's an example on how to make a specific Pokemon learn a new move in the case, like here with Rotom, when it switches forms, it learns that new move. And again, this game variable here is just the index of the Pokemon in your party. This is the DB symbol of the move that you want to learn, and in case you forgot how to do that, you just go into the moves and you copy that identifier right here. And let's say that I wanted him to learn Pound. I would highlight the whole entire colon and the name of the move, and then I would paste the new move and press OK. Now up here at the top, you can see that there's an initialization of all of the signature moves for Rotom that you can then call later when we need to delete them. So they initialize them at the start of the event, and then at the end of the event, you can see over here that it says @Rotom moves. Now if you look at this name here, you can match this name with the variable that they just initialized up here, Rotom moves. And then here's the array of moves. And then down here, when we're calling to delete those moves, it's basically saying for every move in Rotom moves, we need to do a check to see if it's known, and if so, then we need to delete it. Here, they just specify again to delete that move, just in case. Now here's a fun example that shows you how to give a very specific Pokemon. So as you can see here, we have a script command called add specific Pokemon, and when you open it, you're going to see that there's an ID and a level, and I believe these are the two only required parameters. However, there's a ton of optional parameters, and this will be linked down below in the description. It's going to show you right here all the different options that you can add. You can give the ID of the Pokemon, which I'm really not sure if this is optional. I think this is definitely required. Otherwise, it's not going to know what Pokemon to give. The level, again, I believe this is also required. However, everything down here is no longer like something that is required. So you can choose whether you want it to be shiny. You can also say no shiny. However, if you said shiny, I'm pretty sure you could say false, as this does take a Boolean. You can also specify the form if you're trying to give, you know, a specific form. You can give a nickname. You can change the ball that it was captured with. And you can also change the zone that it was captured in. These do take IDs. Now, the ID of the Pokeball is kind of hard to know. Your best bet is probably going to be going into graphics and go into ball. And here you're going to see all of the IDs to the ball. So if any of these are the ones that you want, then just match it. So like, say for instance, you wanted this great ball, then the ID is probably 2. Could also be a 1, technically, since it is probably an index. It could be starting from 0, but it's either 1 or 2. You can also change the captured at, which is going to change the time that it was captured in. And you can also change the captured level, which is just what's displayed in the summary screen. You could add these things if you wanted it to act like it was an egg at one point. You could specify the gender, the nature, the stats, some EVs, if it's holding an item, the ability, specific ID of the ability, not like ability 1 or 2 or 3. You need to use the symbol for it if you're trying to give them a very specific ability. The rareness is really not that important in the sense of when you're giving the Pokemon. But what you do need to realize is that generate from hash is used outside of giving a Pokemon as well. You can actually use generate from hash to define a Pokemon that you're trying to battle. So if you wanted to make a really cool custom Pokemon battle, and you wanted to guarantee that it was a female, or that it was shiny, or that it had certain IVs and EVs, you would do that with a generate from hash command. You can also change the happiness of the Pokemon, like the default happiness. You can change the moves that it knows, which this is definitely shown in the example right here. As you can see, it does take an array of moves. And then it can also take the trainer name, the memo text, and the trainer's ID, which can all be customized. Now moving on to the hidden power person, if you just double click on him, you'll see that here it allows you to call for that party menu, which is going to bring up your party menu and ask you to pick a specific Pokemon. And if you do, it's then going to create some dynamic text here. Dynamic text is honestly pretty cool. You can define the hidden power, and by doing that, you're just going to do Pokemon hidden power with the game variable of 43, which again, that is just the index number of the Pokemon that you've selected through the call party menu command. We then create some text variables here. This one is going to be called power, and it's going to store the type of the hidden power and the name of the type at that. Then we're also going to store the move, and we're going to save it as data move, hidden power, and the name of that move, which we then can use in a text like so, and it will correct it and change that to what it's actually supposed to be. And just don't forget that after, you use these variables, they always give you a warning. Make sure you're resetting your variables. Just make sure. If you want to check for a specific Pokemon inside your PC, we're going to do another similar command to what we did earlier, but instead of doing it in actors, we're actually checking the storage. We're checking if there's any Pokemon in the global storage here that we have. And then over here, we have, again, we are going to call them Pokemon. And then we're checking the DB symbol of all of the Pokemon that are in our storage. And if any of them are a Porygon Z DB symbol, then this would return as true. Otherwise, it's going to return as false. Over here, we're interacting with someone who's checking to see if we have a shiny Pokemon. As usual, they're asking us to pick our own Pokemon and then using the index to use for some checks. The check to know if a Pokemon is shiny is actually really, really simple. We're just doing actors, which again is checking your party, the game variable of that Pokemon in your party, and then .shiny. This is going to return a true or a false, and if it's true, you get this text at the top, and if it's false, you'll get the text at the bottom. So Professor Rowan here, who is giving us an example of a starter selection, he also is giving you an example of how to turn on a self switch for another event in a specific map. To do this, all you have to do is create a command, and that command is going to be called set self switch, and then you're going to say true or false. You're then going to declare which one you're trying to modify. As you know, self switches come as A, B, C, and D. The event ID, and then you can specify the map ID. The map ID is optional, and if you don't specify it, it's going to look for that event on this current map. In this case, the map ID is the same as this map, but it's not always the case. What he's doing here is he's enabling this event by turning on self switch A. This allows users to interact with it initially and not get a starter before talking to Professor Rowan. Now on the second page of Rowan, he's just going to give you some more text, and the same with the third page. The difference is this is probably him telling you, hey, go get a Pokemon, and this one's after you've gotten a Pokemon. And you can tell by the self switches here, which are probably getting modified once you've interacted with this. With this event, when you interact with it the first time, it looks like there's going to be some text, and then it turns on the self switch B automatically. However, if you talk to Rowan first, this is going to have self switch A, and when you interact with it, it's going to automatically go to self switch B, which auto runs and tells it to give you that starter selection. Now to break down this event, as you can see at the very first line, we're disabling a GIF loop so that the GIF is only played one time. So essentially when you switch to the right or switch to the left and you see that little animation of the Pokeball bobbing just one time, this is why. This is basically saying don't keep repeating the GIF, don't keep doing the loop over and over, we only want to see it one time. As you can see though, this is called before you actually call the picture. So I do think that that is very important, that you do need to make sure that you are disabling the GIF loop, you have a little bit of a wait, and then you call the picture after. As you can see here, it is doing it to sprite picture 2, which is over here, show picture 2, which is the starter selection wiggle. Down here you can see that it is manually updating the GIF and telling it to play one more time before getting erased. Over here, with combination of the GIF loop being disabled, you can check if a GIF has actually been completed. To do that, you do scene, sprite set, sprite picture, and then you're going to need to specify the ID of the picture that you're checking. Then you can do .gif_done ? This will check to see if your GIF has finished, and if so, then you can erase the picture and break the loop. This is just a temporary variable that's checking to see which button you're pressing. So if it's going up when you press left, and it's going down when you press right. This is just to help call the correct GIF here and here. Again, as you can see, they manually update the GIF. When you press C, which is the equivalent of pressing A, so this is going to allow it to show the Pokemon sprite. So it's going to zoom in, and then it's going to show the middle thing, like the thing where the Pokemon appears on top of, which then right here you can see that it's calling the starter Dratini picture, which if you look, there's a Larvitar and a Ralts one. These are all just for you to use. And I encourage that you do, because this is a really cool scene. You can see here that it does do a cry Pokemon, which we're going to see in a moment how to do that as well, but you just call the DB symbol of that Pokemon. And then over here at the end, it does look like they were actually using the temporary variables to know which Pokemon you were currently selected or hovered over, so that they can give you the proper Pokemon when the event is over. So if you were hovering over Dratini and that temporary variable was equal to 1, this is the command that they would call for you to get that Dratini. The receive_Pokemon_sequence, and then in parentheses you have the DB symbol of Dratini, and then the level of the Pokemon. As you can see here, it says that this command will add the Pokemon, it will play the jingle, and then it will display the text. And then over here we have another example of how to set another self switch of a different event on a specific map. This is an intro event, and it's kind of unrelated to giving Pokemon. I really don't want to cover this one just yet. We're going to cover this in its own separate video with some other stuff. However, this man over here, the one who calls your party menu and then tells you to pick a Pokemon, and then he'll mimic that Pokemon's cry, is all done right here. As you can see, we call the menu, and then over here, it's checking to see if it's an egg. If it's not an egg, then it will continue. It's going to store the name of the Pokemon in that text variable here, and also in a local variable here. I don't know if local variable is the right name, maybe it's instanced variable, but in a different type of variable, essentially, it's storing the Pokemon's name. Here, you can call the cry of the Pokemon based on the actor's index, and then just using .db symbol. Since we're using a property, since we're using a Pokemon here, like actors and then an index number is technically a Pokemon object, you can use the db symbol here no matter what. You can do this in any case where you're referencing a Pokemon object. And just like that, we've finished this floor. There was a lot to showcase on this one specifically. There's just so much that you can do. There's so much you can check for, and there's just a lot of ways that you can do things. So I encourage everyone, if you haven't yet, to download the PSDK demo 2.0, play it, explore all the floors, interact with the events, and just try and take a look at the events like we did in this video. I'll be doing that, I'll be doing it in future videos anyways, but if you want to get ahead, you can just take the initiative and do it yourself. But we will be breaking down all these events in the next couple of videos. There's a lot of floors, there's a lot to cover. However, some of them, like on the left side, are not as in depth and don't have as many events, so it's not going to take as long to cover. But in the next video, we're going to be covering all these events that are in the library and all the things that you can do in here. It's been a little bit since I last played, but I do remember this area being pretty important. So if you want to take the initiative, you can check it out before the video comes live, or you can just wait and go over it with me, whatever you're more comfortable with. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.